The millionaire stopped his car when he saw the little girl sleeping on the sidewalk, wearing the necklace he had buried with his wife. What he discovered changed his life forever. The first rays of sunlight slipped through the heavy curtains, but August Rayner didn't care. To him, every day had been the same since Clara passed away. It had been a whole year living like a ghost in his own mansion. The house was far too big for just one man. 3 floors, 7 bedrooms, a library, an office he no longer entered, and a garden no one tended. The flowers Clara had once loved were now only dry branches, much like himself. August glanced at the clock on his bedside table. 10:15 in the morning. It didn't matter. He could stay in bed all day, as he had done so many times. At 40 years old, the once successful businessman who appeared on the covers of business magazines was now just a shadow, hiding among marble walls and drawn curtains. "Good morning, Mr. Rayner," said Martha, the housekeeper, knocking lightly on the door. "I've brought your breakfast. Just leave it outside." "Thank you," he replied. Not in the mood to see anyone, Martha was the only person still allowed into the house. Even so, August kept their contact to a minimum. She would come 3 times a week, leave prepared meals, do the essential cleaning, and leave, always respecting his silence. The phone rang for the 5th time that morning. August knew who it was. Thomas Add, his partner at the company, trying once again to convince him to come back. The answering machine picked up. "August, it's me again. We need you here. The situation is complicated. Please call me back when you hear this message." August looked at the phone as though it were a strange object. The company he had built with so much effort, Rayner Technologies, meant nothing to him anymore. On the day of Clara's funeral, he had signed a power of attorney giving Thomas full authority and never returned to the office. With difficulty, he got up and went to the bathroom. The mirror showed a man he barely recognized, unshaven, hollow-eyed, thinner. No wonder Martha always looked at him with concern. The house was engulfed in a silence that seemed woven into its walls. August's footsteps echoed through the empty corridors as he made his way downstairs. In the living room, everything remained exactly as Clara had left it. The book she'd been reading was still marked on page 143, the blue shawl folded over the arm of the sofa. August didn't allow Martha to touch any of those things. In the kitchen, he opened the fridge and grabbed a bottle of water. He wasn't hungry. He rarely was. He went back to the living room and sank into the leather armchair, staring at the neglected garden through the window. Outside, the world kept going. Inside, time had stopped. August closed his eyes and saw Clara. He always saw her. Her smile, her brown hair falling over her shoulders, the way she touched his face before kissing him. Then, like a cruel film on repeat, he saw the hospital, the doctors' grim faces, the word inoperable, and finally, the casket being lowered into the ground. Cancer took Clara in 3 months. Too fast to prepare, yet just long enough for him to see the suffering in her eyes. On the eve of the funeral, August had placed the sapphire necklace around her neck, the one he'd given her on their first wedding anniversary. Clara loved that necklace. She used to say the stone was the same color as his eyes. She should keep it forever, August murmured to himself, remembering how he'd insisted that the necklace be buried with Clara, despite all the advice against leaving valuables in a casket. The sun was already high when August realized he had spent hours sitting in the same position. The house felt hot, stifling. Suddenly, he felt suffocated by those walls. He needed air. Without thinking too much, he grabbed the car keys from a bowl by the entrance, the same place Clara had always left them. His black Audi was dusty in the garage. How long had it been since he'd driven? Weeks, maybe months. He started the engine, which sputtered in protest before roaring to life. He opened the automatic gate and left, squinting against the bright sunlight. The streets of the wealthy suburb where he lived were quiet that Tuesday morning. Large houses, well-kept gardens, expensive cars parked in driveways. August drove aimlessly. He had no destination, just a sudden need to move. He passed the coffee shop where he and Clara used to have Sunday breakfasts. He passed the park where they strolled hand in hand. Every corner held a memory. Without realizing it, he drifted away from the upscale neighborhoods. The houses grew smaller, the streets less tidy. He didn't know this part of town, but kept driving as if something were pulling him forward. He stopped at a red light and looked around. He was in a modest commercial area, a laundromat, a small grocery store, a repair shop. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, lives that continued, unlike his. As soon as the light turned green and he turned right, August saw something that made him slam on the brakes. On the sidewalk in front of a closed shop, leaning against the wall, was a little girl. She seemed to be sleeping, curled up like a kitten, wearing a coat far too big for her small frame. August parked the car hastily. Something about that scene disturbed him deeply. A child alone, sleeping on the street. He looked around for any adult who might be responsible for her, but the sidewalk was empty except for her. He approached slowly, not sure what to do. The girl looked no older than 5. She had dark, messy hair, simple and worn clothing, a dirty face but a serene expression as she slept. "Hello," August called softly, crouching at a safe distance. The girl opened her eyes slowly, showing no fear. Curious green eyes locked on August with a surprising calm for a child in that situation. "Hi," she said, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. "Are you okay?" "Are you here by yourself?" August asked, looking around once more. The girl shrugged, a gesture that seemed too big for her tiny body. "I'm fine," she said simply. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena," she replied, adjusting the oversized coat. That was when August saw it. Around the girl's neck, partially hidden by the coat's collar, was a necklace. Not just any necklace, Clara's sapphire necklace. The same unique piece he had placed on his wife before the burial. The world seemed to spin around him. It was impossible. That necklace had been buried with Clara. How could this girl possibly have it? "That necklace," August began, his voice trembling. "Where did you get it?" Lena looked down, touching the little blue sapphire. "I found it in the trash, a long time ago. It's pretty, isn't it?" "In the trash," August repeated, incredulous. "Yeah, near that place where they put the people who died. The cemetery." She was talking about the cemetery. August felt a chill run through him. It was impossible. No one could have stolen the necklace from the coffin. No, he didn't even want to consider the possibility of grave robbery. It was too revolting to think about. "May I see it?" August asked, extending a trembling hand. Lena hesitated for a moment, then pulled the chain over her head and handed the necklace to him. There was no doubt. It was Clara's necklace. The small oval sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, the delicate white gold chain, and on the back, the engraved initials he had requested, C and A. "Is it yours?" Lena asked, watching August's expression. "It belonged to my wife," he answered, voice thick with emotion. "She doesn't like it anymore." August felt tears burn in his eyes. She passed away. "A year ago?" "Oh," Lena said quietly, "it's a very beautiful necklace." There was something about that girl, a strange calm, a presence August couldn't explain. He held the necklace in his hand, feeling its weight, remembering how it sparkled on Clara's neck. "Are you hungry?" he asked suddenly, realizing that the girl had probably not eaten in hours. Lena nodded shyly. "Come with me. Let's find you something to eat." August had no idea what he was doing, taking a stranger's child for a meal. He should call the police or social services. But the necklace, that impossible coincidence, he felt he couldn't just leave her there. He took Lena to a nearby diner. The waitress eyed the disheveled girl and the tired-looking man with suspicion, but said nothing while taking their order. A sandwich, fries, and a milkshake for Lena, just coffee for August. As Lena ate hungrily, she seemed to relax. Her feet swung beneath the chair, too short to reach the floor. Occasionally, she glanced at August curiously but didn't speak much. "Where do you sleep?" he finally asked. Lena shrugged again. "In places." "What places?" "Wherever I can, sometimes in the park, sometimes near the bakery, because they give out bread in the morning." August's heart clenched. So small, so vulnerable, surviving on the streets. "Doesn't anyone take care of you?" Lena lowered her head, tracing patterns on the condensation of her milkshake glass. "Not anymore." August took a deep breath. He didn't need to know more right then. The full story would come in time if necessary. What mattered was that this child was alone, abandoned, sleeping on the streets. "Lena," he said, hardly thinking it through, "would you like to come to my house just until we find a safe place for you?" Her eyes lit up for a moment, but then she looked cautious. "Is your house big?" "Yes, it's quite big." "Are there other grown-ups there?" "No, just me. And Martha, who comes to clean." Lena seemed to consider the offer with a seriousness no 5-year-old should have. "Okay," she finally said, "but can I keep the necklace? It's the only pretty thing I have." August looked at the necklace in his hand. It was the last physical gift he had from Clara. For a year he had lived bound to the past, to memories, to pain. And now this little person had appeared out of nowhere, with Clara's necklace, like some sign he couldn't understand. "Yes," he replied, returning the necklace to her. "You can keep it." As they left the diner, Lena naturally took his hand, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Her small hand was warm, alive. August realized it was the first meaningful human contact he had had in months. On the way back to the car, August knew he should be thinking about legal implications, responsibilities, what to tell the authorities. But all he could feel was something stirring inside him, something he thought had died with Clara. While helping Lena into the car and fastening her seatbelt, August had no idea what lay ahead. He only knew that for the first time in a year, he was doing something other than merely existing. He was taking action. He was feeling. And when Lena smiled at him, a tired but genuine smile, August Rayner felt a spark of life in his frozen chest. The empty house would now have a new presence. And maybe, just maybe, the silence would begin to break. The mansion's gate opened automatically as August's Audi approached. Lena, sitting in the passenger seat with the seatbelt pulled tight around her small body, stared out the window wide-eyed. The driveway was long and lined with old trees, whose dancing shadows moved across the asphalt as the late afternoon sun began to set. "Wow," she whispered. "It's like a castle." August observed the girl's reaction from the corner of his eye. It was strange to see his home through the eyes of a child, a property that had become merely a place to exist rather than a place to live. "It's too big for one person," he commented, more to himself than to Lena. The house rose imposingly at the end of the driveway, a 3-story Victorian-style building with tall windows and a wide front porch. The garden, once immaculate, showed clear signs of neglect. Unevenly overgrown grass, misshapen shrubs, wilted flowers that no one bothered to remove. August parked in the spacious garage. Throughout the drive, his mind had oscillated between disbelief at what he was doing and a strange sense of peace. He had brought an unknown child home, a 5-year-old girl he'd found sleeping on the sidewalk, wearing Clara's necklace. "Let's go in," he said, helping Lena out of the car. She took his hand again, as though she had done it hundreds of times. Her small steps followed August's, her eyes taking in everything with silent curiosity. The sapphire necklace gleamed softly against her skin whenever the light hit it. August opened the back door leading into the kitchen. Lena entered timidly, her eyes scanning every detail. The dark wood cabinets, the marble counter, the stainless steel appliances that were rarely used. A single apple rested in a fruit bowl, and the afternoon light slipped lazily through dusty windows. "You live here all by yourself?" she asked in a small voice in that big space. "Yes," August replied. "Just me." "It's really big," Lena said, stretching the word as she slowly turned, taking it all in. "Martha comes 3 times a week to clean and leave food," August explained, noticing that the kitchen, though spotless, had the sterile air of a rarely used space. "But she doesn't live here." "Who's Martha?" "She's the housekeeper. She's worked for me for a long time." Lena nodded as though that made perfect sense. Her small fingers touched the marble counter, leaving temporary prints that disappeared soon after. August led her around the house. They passed the dining room, with its long wooden table that hadn't seated anyone in months, the crystal chandelier that hadn't been lit for a dinner in ages, the perfectly aligned chairs awaiting guests who never came. "Do you eat here?" Lena asked, eyeing the large table that could seat a dozen people. "No," August admitted. I usually eat in the kitchen or in the office. Or maybe you don't eat, Lena observed, looking at him with those piercing green eyes. August was taken aback by the girl's perceptive remark. Indeed, many times he simply forgot to eat. They continued to the main living room, with its leather sofas, unused fireplace, and heavy drapes that blocked most of the light. It was an elegant space, filled with expensive furniture and carefully selected artwork. But there was a fine layer of dust in the corners that Martha couldn't quite reach, and an atmosphere of disuse no cleaning could mask. In each room, Lena looked around without saying a word, just taking in every detail with her watchful eyes. She looked so small and fragile amidst the large spaces and imposing furniture. That's the library. August pointed to a set of dark wooden double doors. And that door leads to the backyard garden. Lena approached one of the windows, peeking through a gap in the drapes. Why is it so dark in here? There's still sunlight outside. August hesitated. He couldn't recall exactly when he'd started keeping the curtains closed. Perhaps when sunlight became too painful after Clara's death. Or maybe when he realized he couldn't bear to watch the world continue on while his own had stopped. I prefer it this way, he finally said. When they reached the main hall, with the staircase leading to the second floor, Lena stopped and let go of August's hand. She slowly turned, taking in the high ceiling, the old chandelier, the paintings on the walls, and the closed doors leading to other rooms. The hall was impressive, with marble floors, a curved staircase and tall windows letting in golden beams of light through partially drawn curtains. It was the heart of the house, from which every other space branched out. It was also the room most infused with Clara's absence. Her soft floral perfume used to linger there, and the sound of her footsteps coming down the stairs was often the first thing August heard in the morning. Lena finished her silent inspection and then, with a child's blunt honesty, said, "This house feels sad." August swallowed hard. Such simple words hit something deep inside him. That was exactly it. The house was sad, just like him. Too big, too quiet, too cold. "Yes," was all he managed to say. Lena looked at him with a comprehension far beyond her 5 years. There was no pity in her gaze, just recognition. "The lady who took care of me also had a sad house," Lena said, stepping closer to August. "But she had a lot of cats. The cats made noise and mess, that made it a little less sad." A hint of a smile touched August's face. "I don't have cats," he said. "No pets at all." "That's okay," Lena replied. "I guess no one stays sad forever, right?" August didn't know how to respond. For a year he'd lived exactly that. A permanent sadness, a pain that never eased, a grief that filled every inch of the house and his existence. The idea that his sadness might not last forever seemed too distant, too impossible. "Do you want to eat something else?" he asked, changing the subject. "Or maybe take a bath?" "A bath," Lena decided, looking down at her dirty hands. "It's been a while since I had a real bath." The simplicity of her statement pained August. A child so young shouldn't have to go a while without a real bath. He took Lena to the guest bathroom on the ground floor. It was a spacious room with white marble everywhere, a large bathtub and mirrored walls. Plush white towels sat perfectly folded on glass shelves, and expensive bath products, never used, waited in elegant little bottles. "Wow," Lena said, smiling for the first time since they'd arrived. "Looks like a princess's bathroom." "I'll run the bath for you," August said, suddenly aware that he had no idea how to care for a small child. What was the correct water temperature? How much soap should he use? Would she need help? He aimed for a middle ground, warm water, not too hot or cold, and placed fresh towels within reach. He found a lavender-scented soap that seemed gentler than the others and set it on the tub's edge. "Can you bathe by yourself?" he asked, feeling awkward and uncertain. "Sure," she answered, as if it were the most obvious question in the world. "I'm 5, I'm not a baby." There was something both sad and admirable about this forced independence in one so young. "Right," August said with a slight smile. "I'll find some clothes for you. Yours are quite dirty." He left Lena in the bathroom and headed to what had once been Clara's bedroom. He paused at the door, taking a deep breath before turning the handle. It was the first time in months he had entered the room. Everything was just as she'd left it. Creams on the dresser, books on the bedside table, the faint trace of her perfume still lingering. The air was still, as though time had frozen in that particular space. August could almost see Clara sitting on the edge of the bed, brushing her hair as she did each night before sleeping. With a tight feeling in his chest, August opened the closet. His hands trembled slightly as he searched among Clara's clothes for something that might fit Lena, even if just for now. He found a light blue cotton t-shirt that might work as a dress for the girl. He held the fabric to his face for a moment, hoping to catch Clara's scent, but only detected the gentle fragrance of the fabric softener Martha used. Even that was fading over time. When he returned to the bathroom, he knocked on the door. "Lena, I brought you something to wear. You can come in." Lena was wrapped in a large towel, looking even smaller. Her dark hair was wet and combed, and her freshly washed face revealed freckles on her nose that August hadn't noticed before. Without the layer of dirt, she looked even more vulnerable and young. "This is all I have for now," he said, handing her the t-shirt. "Tomorrow we can buy some clothes for you." "Thank you," she replied, taking the garment carefully. "I can dress myself." August nodded and stepped back into the hallway. As he waited, the reality of the situation began to weigh on him. What was he doing? He'd brought an abandoned child home without notifying anyone, without going through official channels. He should call social services or the police. Yet something inside him resisted. The appearance of this girl wearing Clara's necklace felt too important to dismiss. The door opened and Lena came out. Clara's t-shirt turned dress fell to her knees, the shoulders drooped, but she seemed pleased. "It's soft," she said, running her hand over the fabric. "And it smells good." August swallowed hard, wondering if Lena could also detect any lingering trace of Clara's perfume. "It's a bit big," he observed. "That's okay. I like big clothes. Gives me room to grow." The practical simplicity of her remark made August smile slightly. He walked beside her back to the living room. The sun was beginning to set, making the house even darker with the curtains closed. August turned on a few lights, but the space still felt gloomy. "You must be tired," he said. "We can set up a bedroom for you tomorrow, but for tonight, the sofa will have to do." "That's okay," Lena replied, eyeing the large leather couch. "It looks comfy. And it's better than the ground." Once again, August felt a stab of pain, thinking about the nights this little child must have spent sleeping in far worse places. He went to get a pillow and a soft blanket from the linen closet. As he arranged them on the sofa for Lena, he realized he didn't know what else to do. Should he read her a story? Ask if she'd brushed her teeth? What were the protocols for a 5-year-old? "Would you like some water or anything before sleeping?" he asked, feeling awkward. "No, thanks," Lena said, climbing onto the couch and sitting cross-legged. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What happened to your wife?" The direct question caught August off guard. For a moment, he felt the familiar pain rising in his chest, the feeling of not being able to breathe whenever he talked about Clara. "She got sick," he said simply, sitting in an armchair near the sofa. "It was cancer. The doctors tried, but..." His voice faltered. "My mom died too," Lena said, surprising him with her calm for someone so young. "It's been over a year. It was just the two of us." The simplicity with which she spoke of her loss hit August deeply. This small child had faced a pain similar to his own. "I'm sorry," he said. "She got really sick," Lena continued, fiddling with the edge of the blanket. "In the hospital, she gave me a kiss and told me everything would be okay. But then she never woke up." The soft lamp in the living room cast gentle shadows on Lena's face, highlighting her delicate features. There were no tears in her eyes as she spoke of her mother. Perhaps she had already cried all she could. "And then?" he asked softly. "Then I went to live with the cat lady. She was nice, but she got too old and had to go to a place for older people. She couldn't take me with her." Lena shrugged, that adult gesture on a child's frame. "So I was left alone." August felt a knot tighten in his throat. How many nights had this child spent alone on the streets? How much fear had she felt? "You're not alone anymore," he said, not really thinking about what it implied. Lena looked at him with those piercing green eyes, as though evaluating the sincerity of his words. "Neither are you," she replied simply. Her response was so direct and true that August felt as though something inside him had cracked open. He had been alone, truly alone, so long that he'd forgotten what it was like to share a space with another human being, breathing the same air, bringing life into silent walls. They stayed quiet for a few minutes. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, but rather a shared one, as though they both understood the language of loss. Outside, the day finally gave way to night, and the first stars appeared through a gap in the drapes. "I think I'll sleep now," Lena finally said, lying down and pulling the blanket up to her chin. "Good night, Mr. August." "Good night, Lena," he answered, standing up. "If you need anything, I'll be upstairs." "Which room?" "There are lots of them. The second door to the right after the stairs." Lena nodded, memorizing the information. "Okay, but I won't need anything. I'm a good sleeper." August smiled genuinely for the first time that day. A good sleeper, then. He tucked the blanket around her and turned off the main lights, leaving just a small lamp lit in the corner. The sapphire necklace rested against Lena's neck, catching the soft light in its deep blue. As he climbed the stairs, August felt a strange mix of emotions. There was something comforting about knowing he wasn't alone in the house anymore, even if only for this night. His steps echoed in the corridor upstairs, a sound he hadn't really listened to in months. Usually he was too numbed by medication to notice. In his bedroom, August sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the pill bottle on his bedside table. The small, innocent-looking white pills had been his constant companions for a year. For 12 months, he hadn't slept without them. Natural sleep had become a stranger, and only sedatives brought him dreamless rest. No memories, no Clara. But tonight, things felt different. It wasn't just Lena's presence, it was what she represented. A child who, like him, carried a huge loss, but somehow kept going. A little girl who slept on park benches and could still smile and say, "You can't stay sad forever." August picked up the bottle, feeling its familiar weight in his hand. He turned it slowly, hearing the soft rattle of pills inside. Then, in a decisive gesture, he put it back on the table without opening it. Tonight, he would try to sleep without chemical help. He lay down and switched off the light. In the dark, his thoughts spun around the day's events, the inexplicable urge to drive, finding Lena, the necklace that should have been buried with Clara. There was something about this chain of events that felt significant, as though the universe was trying to tell him something. Then Lena's simple words echoed in his mind. "This house feels sad." It was true. The house was as steeped in mourning as he was. Every room, every object, every shadow bore Clara's absence. For a year, he had turned the mansion into a mausoleum, a place where time didn't move and joy couldn't enter. Now on the living room sofa downstairs, there was a little girl who, despite her own grief, talked about not staying sad forever. A child who had lost as much as he had, yet still found room for hope. August shifted on the bed, seeking a comfortable position. His body, accustomed to sedatives, protested the attempt at natural sleep, but his mind was oddly calm. Downstairs, Lena slept, a child who lost her mother just as he had lost his wife, two broken souls under the same roof. There was something both poetic and sad about that, and maybe, just maybe, a faint note of hope, like the first notes of a long-forgotten song. August didn't know when sleep finally claimed him, but for the first time in a year, he dozed off without medication. And as darkness enveloped him, there were no nightmares, just a deep, dreamless rest. Down in the living room, Lena slept curled in the blanket, the sapphire necklace glowing softly against her neck. Her face was serene, as though she, despite her few years and many hardships, knew she was exactly where she needed to be. Two grieving souls, separated by a single flaw, united by a similar loss, slept in a house that felt sad. But maybe, just maybe, the sadness wouldn't last forever. The third day at the Rayner mansion began with a ray of sunlight piercing the living room curtains. Lena woke up early, rubbing her eyes as she adjusted on the couch that had served as her bed for the past few days. Silence still dominated the house, but it was different now. Not a silence of abandonment, but of rest. The little girl carefully folded the blanket she'd been using and placed it atop the pillow. Her bare feet made almost no sound on the cold floor as she walked around the living room, noticing details she could now see more clearly in the morning light. Everything looked so grey. The light-colored walls, the dark furniture, the heavy drapes, all in subdued, lifeless tones. Even the few paintings on the walls seemed like pale landscapes in soft, washed-out colors. Lena glanced outside the window and saw the contrast between the house's interior and the world beyond. The garden, even neglected, burst with color. Green, yellow, purple, pink. Flowers grew chaotically among the tall grass, stubborn survivors of carelessness. That's when an idea formed in Lena's mind. The house needed color, it needed life. Moving quietly, she unlocked the door leading to the backyard and stepped out. The morning air was cool, and the dew soaked her feet as she walked across the grass. She crouched by a flower bed where wildflowers of various kinds had taken over. Carefully, she began to pick a few. White daisies, small purple blooms whose name she didn't know, bright yellow dandelions, and a bit of green foliage. She made a small, colorful bouquet in her hands. Back in the kitchen, Lena opened cabinets until she found what she was looking for. Glasses, big ones, small ones, wide ones, narrow ones. She filled them with tap water and distributed the flowers among them, a simple but lively arrangement. She placed a glass of daisies on the kitchen table, another with purple blossoms in the dining room, a third filled with dandelions on the living room coffee table. Thus she went, scattering little spots of color throughout the house until she ran out of flowers. Satisfied with her work but still feeling something was missing, Lena searched for paper and pencils. She found a stack of blank paper in the office August had briefly shown her the day before, along with some colored pencils in a drawer. Perfect. She sat on the living room floor and began to draw. Houses, flowers, the sun, smiling clouds, a cat, whatever popped into her 5-year-old mind. Each drawing was an explosion of color and simple shapes, a pure expression of childish joy. When she finished, she looked at her work, 10 bright drawings, ready to bring life to the drab house. August woke up later than he intended. Without the pills, his body seemed to be making up for nights of restless sleep with extra hours of rest. For a moment, he felt disoriented. Something was different, something he couldn't quite identify. Then he remembered Lena. The girl was downstairs, sleeping on the couch. The little girl with Clara's necklace. He got up quickly, worried that she might have woken up scared in a strange place. He got dressed and hurried downstairs, still running his fingers through his hair. "Lena?" he called upon reaching the bottom of the staircase. "I'm here," answered a small voice coming from the living room. August headed in and stopped at the doorway, surprised by what he saw. Lena sat on the floor, surrounded by colorful drawings. But that wasn't the only difference. The entire living room looked transformed. There were flowers in glasses everywhere, little wildflower arrangements that added vibrant pops of color to the once monotonous space. The curtains were partly open, letting morning light dance on the furniture. And at the center of it all was a 5-year-old girl, smiling as she held up a picture. "Good morning," Lena said. "I did some things while you were sleeping." August looked around, taking in the changes. Instead of the irritation he would have expected, he used to feel agitated whenever Martha suggested any alterations. He felt something else, something like relief. "I see you've been busy," he commented, stepping closer. The house needed color, Lena explained with a child's simplicity, so it wouldn't be so gray. August picked up one of the drawings from the floor. It showed a colorful house under a smiling sun. In another time, he might have found it too childish for his elegant living room. Now it seemed exactly what the room needed. "Can I put them on the walls?" Lena asked, pointing at her drawings. "I promise not to use anything that will damage them." August hesitated briefly. Clara had always been very particular about the walls, preferring properly framed artwork. Yet, for some reason, Lena's idea of taping her drawings to the mansion's walls didn't bother him as it once might have. "That's fine," he agreed. "We can use tape. I have some in the office drawer." Lena's eyes lit up. Really? I can, for real. Yes, August confirmed, surprised by his own calm acceptance of these childish artworks in his otherwise formal house. Together, they went in search of tape and began sticking the drawings up. A smiling sun on the kitchen wall, a colorful house near the front entrance, flowers, both drawn and real, in the living room. Each drawing brought a bit more life to the previously sterile rooms. Look, Lena said, showing him another drawing. It's me and you. August looked at the paper. Two stick figures, one tall, one small, were holding hands under a blue sky. The smaller one wore what looked like the sapphire necklace, depicted as a bright blue circle. That's us, he agreed, feeling something odd in his chest. Not pain, as he'd expected whenever forming new bonds, but something gentler, softer. While Lena continued decorating the house, August prepared breakfast. Eggs, toast, orange juice, real food, not just black coffee like he'd been having for months. He ate with Lena at the kitchen table, now brightened by a glass of daisies. You're still wearing my t-shirt, he observed, noting she continued to use Clara's old shirt as a makeshift dress. I washed it in the bathroom last night, she explained. With soap, it's not perfect, but at least it doesn't smell bad. August smiled. We'll get you new clothes today. Can I choose them? Of course. After breakfast, while August washed the dishes, Lena resumed her mission of transforming the house. She found some cushions in a storage closet and began placing them around the living room floor, creating little cozy areas among the formal furniture. What are you doing? August asked, as he watched her drag a large cushion toward the center of the living room. Making comfortable spots, she answered, as though it were obvious. The chairs are too hard and big. And the sofa is cold. Indeed, the mansion's furnishings had been chosen more for aesthetics than comfort. Clara liked clean lines and sophisticated fabrics, preferring that to anything overly cozy. Does this bother you? Lena asked, suddenly worried when she saw August's pensive expression. I can put them back. No, he said quickly. I don't mind. You can leave them. And that was the truth. He really didn't mind. The changes that once would have annoyed him and made him anxious for the old order now seemed refreshing. It was as if the house was finally breathing again after a long submersion. As August watched her transform the space, he realized something extraordinary. For the first time in a year, he didn't feel the need to keep everything exactly as Clara had left it. The small changes didn't feel like they were erasing her memory. On the contrary, they seemed to free the house from the weight of her absence. After they went to a nearby department store to buy Lena some clothes, where she chose colorful, practical pieces, they returned to the mansion. Lena, now dressed in new jeans and a red t-shirt, looked at the garden through the kitchen window. Can we go outside? She asked, pressing her face against the glass. August followed her gaze. The garden had once been Clara's pride and joy, her personal project. After her death, he could barely bring himself to look at it, let alone care for it. The grass was overgrown, the plants were shapeless, dead leaves piled in corners. It perfectly reflected his neglected grief. It's really messy, he said, hesitating. We can fix it, Lena suggested, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. I know how to work with plants. The cat lady taught me. August thought for a moment. Yes, the garden needed it. And oddly, caring for it didn't feel like a betrayal to Clara's memory. Rather, it felt like honoring it. All right, he agreed. Let's see what we can do. Lena clapped her hands in delight and ran to the back door. August followed more slowly, a mix of anticipation and apprehension swirling in him. It had been so long since he'd really been in that garden, not just looking at it from the windows. The air was fresh and fragrant when they stepped outside. Despite the neglect, Clara's plants were resilient, many surviving and even blooming in a wild, unkempt way. It's so big, Lena exclaimed, spinning in circles with her arms wide. And there are so many flowers. August viewed the space through her eyes and saw not the abandonment that tormented him, but the wild beauty that had arisen. Climbing roses on the fences, lavender growing in scraggly clumps, and tiny wildflowers thriving among the larger plants. My wife loved flowers, he said, words coming easier than expected. This was her favorite place. Lena stopped spinning and looked at him, listening intently. "Did she plant all these?" she asked. "Most of them," August replied. "She spent hours here." She said the flowers talked to her. Instead of finding that strange, Lena smiled. "They really do talk," she said seriously, "just not with words." August felt a pressure in his chest, not painful, but a sense of recognition. That was exactly the sort of thing Clara would say. "What should we do first?" he asked, surprised by his own willingness. Lena looked around, considering. "We can clear away dead leaves and pull out the weeds. Then we water everything." August found garden tools in the small shed at the back of the yard, all covered in dust, untouched for a year. There were pruning shears, gloves, rakes, and shovels of various sizes. He chose some for Lena and went back to where she waited. "Have you used garden tools before?" he asked, offering her a small trowel. "Yes," she replied, gripping it confidently. "At the cat lady's house, I helped with the plants. She let me dig holes." They started working side by side. Lena focused on one flower bed, clearing dead leaves and weeds with her determined little hands. August tackled the overgrown grass and the edges of the beds, surprised how the motions came back to him. He had helped Clara in this very garden many times. The sun rose higher, and soon both of them were sweaty and covered in dirt. But there was something deeply satisfying about the physical labor, about seeing the visible transformation taking place under their efforts. "Look what I found!" Lena exclaimed after a while, pointing to a small bed she'd uncovered under a layer of dead leaves. "There are little buds coming up." August came over and saw small green shoots just breaking through the newly cleared soil. They were tulips, Clara's favorites. She always planted them to bloom in spring. "They're tulips," he explained, crouching beside Lena. "They're just starting out. In a few weeks they'll have big, colorful flowers. Will we take care of them until then?" Lena asked, her eyes filled with hopeful expectation. Her question carried more weight than she knew. Caring for the tulips until they bloomed meant Lena staying on. It meant commitment, continuity, a future. "Yes," August answered, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. "We'll take care of them together." Lena's smile was radiant. She returned to her work with renewed enthusiasm, talking to the plants as she freed them from their covering of dead leaves. August watched her for a moment. This little girl, who had come out of nowhere wearing Clara's necklace, was bringing life not only to the house, but to him as well. It was as though every cushion on the floor, every drawing on the wall, every wildflower in a glass was a small act of healing. As they worked, Lena began humming a soft tune, a children's song about plants and flowers. Her voice was light and a bit off-key, making August smile. When Lena accidentally flung a handful of dirt in the air, smearing her own nose, he couldn't hold back a laugh. The sound of his own laughter surprised him. It was almost forgotten. Lena looked at him, confused at first, then laughed as well, pointing at her own muddy nose. Soon they were both laughing, dirty under the warm afternoon sun. August felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in over a year. It wasn't complete happiness, nor an end to his pain, but it was something new, a moment of genuine joy in the midst of grief. And there, among the flowers Clara had loved, August felt her presence, not as a painful ghost or a haunting memory, but as a gentle, loving essence, as if she were smiling at them, approving of the small, colorful revolution a 5-year-old was creating in their lives. "I think your wife would be happy to see the flowers again," Lena remarked, as if reading his thoughts, while planting a small sprout in the freshly cleared soil. "Yes," August agreed, feeling an unexpected peace. She would love it. For the first time since Clara's death, thinking about her brought not only pain but also gratitude and love, and the certainty that she would want the garden and life to go on flourishing. Night fell on the Rayner mansion. August sat on the back porch, a cup of tea in his hands, watching as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The garden before him no longer looked so abandoned after the hours of work he and Lena had put in. Dead leaves had been cleared, weeds pulled, and the flower beds were regaining their defined shapes. Lena was inside, bathing after a day spent playing in dirt and flowers. August could hear her high-pitched voice humming a children's tune through the walls, a reminder that he was no longer alone. It was amazing how much space a 5-year-old could fill, not just physically, but emotionally. In just a few days, Lena had transformed the entire atmosphere of the house. August stood up and walked back inside. The house that had felt like a mausoleum for a year was now breathing again. Wildflowers in glasses provided bright spots of color. More drawings, Lena's new creations, adorned the walls. Colorful cushions lay scattered on the floor. It was a new life for the once sterile space. The curtains were no longer completely shut. Lena had opened them, letting light flood in during the day. Houses need to breathe, she had explained with a child's simple wisdom. August passed through the living room, noting how each small change felt natural, as if the house had been waiting for it all along. Clara's traces were still everywhere. The paintings she had chosen, the books she had read, the organization she preferred. But now they blended with the renewed energy Lena had brought. "How is this happening?" he murmured to himself, lightly touching one of Lena's colorful drawings taped to the wall. A week ago, the idea of changing anything in his house would have made him anxious and angry. Any alteration felt like a betrayal of Clara's memory, as though moving a cushion meant erasing her a bit more from the world. But now, strangely, these changes felt like they honored her memory rather than erasing it. The sound of the shower stopped, and soon Lena appeared in the hallway wearing new pajamas. They had bought some along with her new clothes. "All done," she announced, her hair still damp. "I got all the dirt out from under my nails. Look." She held out her small hands for August to inspect, an innocent, trusting gesture that made his chest tighten. "Very good," he praised, examining her now clean fingers. "You must be tired after all that work in the garden." "A little," Lena admitted, yawning. "But it was fun. Can we keep going tomorrow?" "Of course." August watched as she headed to the couch, which was still serving as her bed. Lena had grown fond of that spot, arranging her few belongings around it, drawings, colored pencils, and a small teddy bear they had bought along with her clothes. Seeing her prepare for another night on the sofa, August made a decision. "Lena," he called, "would you like your own bedroom?" Her eyes went wide, sparkling with surprise and hope. "A real bedroom?" "For me?" "Yes," August confirmed. "We have plenty of spare rooms here. I think you deserve your own space and not just a couch." "Can I pick which one?" she asked, already bouncing with excitement. August smiled. "Let's check out our options." They walked upstairs together, Lena holding his hand tightly. On the second floor there were 4 bedrooms besides the master suite where August slept. One had been Clara's bedroom, untouched since her death. Another was an occasional guest room. 2 had been converted into offices, one for August and one for Clara, who had worked as a book editor. August opened the door to Clara's office. It was a spacious room with a large window overlooking the backyard. The walls were painted a soft shade of blue, the only room in the house not in neutral tones. A sleek desk, bookshelves, and a reading chair composed the furniture. Manuscripts were still piled up, pens still organized in holders, sticky notes with Clara's delicate handwriting still stuck on surfaces. "This used to be my wife's office," August explained. "She worked here." Lena stepped in shyly, looking around in curiosity. "There are so many books," she noted, eyeing the filled shelves. "Clara loved reading," August said. "She also helped make books. She was an editor." "What's an editor?" "Someone who helps writers turn their stories into real books." Lena nodded, taking it in. She ran her fingers over the desk, the spines of the lower shelf books, the soft fabric of the chair. "It's a pretty room," she concluded. August observed her every reaction, waiting to feel guilt or reluctance about repurposing Clara's office. Surprisingly, he felt none. Instead, it felt right. This space, full of stories and imagination, seemed perfect for a creative child like Lena. "Would you like this to be your bedroom?" he asked. Lena looked at him, seriousness in her gaze. "Are you sure?" "It was your wife's." Her genuine concern touched August deeply. Here was a little girl who needed a home, yet she worried about his feelings. "I'm sure," he said firmly. "Clara would have loved seeing this room filled with life again." Lena's smile was like sunrise. Then yes, I'd really like it. We'll need to make some changes, August said, looking around. Take out the desk, bring in a bed. Can we keep the books? Lena asked, eyeing the shelves hopefully. Of course. Do you like books? I love stories, she confirmed. The cat lady used to read to me every night. They planned together how the room would look. August fetched some paper and pencil, and Lena drew her vision. A bed by the window, the bookshelves remaining, a space on the floor to play, and plenty of color. We'll start fixing it up tomorrow, August promised when they finished planning. For now, you might have to use the sofa one more night. That's fine, Lena agreed easily. I'm used to it. After tucking Lena in on the sofa and reading her a bedtime story, one of Clara's childhood favorites he found on the shelves, August headed upstairs to his own room. Instead of going straight to bed, he stopped by the window overlooking the quiet street. That little girl is making me live again, he whispered to the glass, seeing his reflection overlapped with the distant city lights. It was true. For the first time in a year, August felt genuinely present, not just existing, but living, making plans, thinking of the future. The crushing weight of grief was still there, but it no longer consumed him completely. The next day, August woke up with renewed energy. After breakfast, they began transforming the office. First, they emptied the room, taking out the desk and other items that wouldn't be needed in a child's room. August carefully packed Clara's manuscripts and personal objects, not disposing of them, but giving them a new place. Lena helped as much as she could, carrying small objects and giving directions on how she wanted things arranged. Her excitement was contagious, and soon August was fully immersed in the task. A trip to a furniture store led to the purchase of a single bed with a colorful headboard, a small chest for toys, and a star-shaped lamp. Lena chose a purple floral bedspread, along with a set of throw pillows, carefully selected from dozens of options. Isn't this too much? August asked as their cart began to fill. A bedroom has to be cozy, Lena declared confidently. It needs soft things. Who was he to argue with such wisdom? By the end of the day, the room was transformed. The new bed stood under the window, covered with the purple spread and assorted colorful pillows. The bookshelves remained, now with space on the lower shelves for Lena's few belongings. A soft rug covered part of the wooden floor, creating a cozy area to play. The star-shaped lamp cast a gentle glow when turned on. Lena taped her drawings to the walls, completing the transformation. What had once been a formal, elegant space was now cheerful, welcoming, and perfect for a 5-year-old. What do you think? August asked, standing at the door while Lena spun in the middle of the room, taking it all in. Now this room is happy, she declared, smiling so brightly it lit up her entire face. August felt something both strange and familiar in his chest, a warmth, a sense of fullness, a certainty. It was like a door had opened inside him, one that had been locked for too long. Looking at Lena, so small and yet so brave, August felt like a father. He didn't put it into words, not even in his own mind, but the feeling was there. Protective, loving, committed. A bond not of blood but formed naturally, like the wildflowers finding their way through stones in the garden. This little person now depended on him. And surprisingly, he depended on her too, to remind him how to live, how to feel, how to look forward rather than remain stuck in the past. August wasn't forgetting Clara. He was transforming his pain into something new, something alive. And in doing so, he was transforming himself. Days in the Rayner mansion settled into a new routine. Mornings began with breakfast together in the now sunny kitchen. August no longer kept the drapes closed. Then they would spend time in the garden, have lunch, and rest or play indoors. Sometimes they ventured out into the city, exploring places Lena had never seen. It was a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after Lena's arrival. The sky had been cloudy all day, and a light rain started falling shortly after lunch, preventing them from working in the yard. August was in his office, handling some paperwork. After years of absence, he was finally beginning to take interest in his company again. Lena, meanwhile, explored the house. She already knew every inch of the first floor, but the second still held some mysteries. August had explained that some doors stayed closed because they were filled with Clara's memories, which were still difficult for him. Lena respected those limits with a maturity beyond her years. That afternoon, however, her curiosity led her to August's office. The door was ajar, and she saw him focused on the scattered papers on his desk. "Can I come in?" she asked, tapping gently on the door. August looked up, surprised, then smiled. "Of course. I'm just reviewing a few contracts." "What's a contract?" Lena asked, stepping inside and eyeing the papers curiously. "They're written agreements between people," he explained. "They say what each person should do." "Sounds boring," Lena said with childlike frankness. August chuckled. "Sometimes it is, but it's important." Lena nodded, accepting his explanation. She started exploring the office, checking out the items on the shelves, the books, and the small sculptures that decorated the room. It was a more masculine, sober space than the rest of the house, with dark wood and leather accents. "What's this?" she asked, pointing to an ornate globe. "It's the world," he said. "All the countries and oceans." "Do we live here?" Lena randomly spun the globe and pointed to a spot. "No, that's Australia. We're here." August turned the globe again, showing her the correct location. Lena continued exploring until she reached a wall of framed items, mostly diplomas, awards, and photos of August at corporate events. But down in one corner was a different photo. It was a picture of Clara. She stood in a garden, likely the very one Lena helped revive, wearing a light dress, her brown hair shining in the sun. Her smile was radiant, brimming with life. Around her neck, glowing against her fair skin, was the sapphire necklace. Lena froze, staring intently at the photo. Instinctively, her hand went to her own neck, where the same necklace now hung. August noticed her sudden silence and followed her gaze, seeing which photo held her attention so completely. The familiar tightness rose in his chest, but it wasn't the same sharp pain as before. It was more like a blend of longing and gratitude. "That's her, right?" Lena whispered, eyes never leaving the photo. "Your wife?" "Yes," August said, standing and walking to where Lena stood. "That's Clara." "She was really pretty," Lena commented. "And she looked happy." "She was both," August agreed, looking at the image of the woman he loved. It felt strange how he could now look at Clara's photo without feeling suffocated by pain. Sadness remained, but there was also room for good memories. Lena pointed to the necklace in the picture. "She's wearing my necklace." "It was hers," August gently corrected. Lena kept her eyes on the photo while her hand remained on the sapphire at her own neck. "It was hers," she repeated, more as a confirmation than a question. "Yes." "It was her favorite," August said, remembering the day he'd given it to Clara. How her eyes had lit up the moment she opened the box, how she insisted on wearing it that very same day. Lena fell quiet for a moment, pensive. Then, with a seriousness that contrasted with her childish face, she said, "I think she brought me here." August looked at Lena, startled by her words. She was still holding the necklace between her fingers, her gaze shifting between the photo and the pendant. "What do you mean?" he asked, curious about the child's thoughts. "I can't explain it," Lena said, furrowing her brow, "but I think she wanted me to find you. That's why the necklace ended up with me." It was a simple, almost superstitious idea, but Lena spoke with unwavering conviction. August didn't respond verbally. He wasn't sure what to say. He wasn't one to believe in signs from beyond or messages from the departed. He'd always been practical, rational, and yet something in his chest warmed and expanded at Lena's words. A part of him, maybe the last fragment that still held on to hope, silently agreed. Perhaps something bigger was at play. Perhaps their meeting wasn't mere coincidence. Perhaps Clara, in some way he couldn't understand, had guided this little orphan girl to his door, not to replace her, but to help him keep living. Lena didn't seem bothered by August's silence. She kept staring at the photo, absorbing every detail of Clara's face. She had kind eyes, Lena finally observed. "Yes," August agreed, feeling a sad smile tug at his lips. "She saw the best in everyone." "Just like you," Lena said, turning to face him now. August felt a lump in his throat. He didn't see himself that way. Over the last year, He had shut himself away completely, unable to see anything beyond his own pain. It took a 5-year-old child to remind him who he used to be. "I'll try to be," he promised, more to himself than to Lena. The rain kept falling softly outside, a silvery curtain beyond the windows. Inside the office, August and Lena stood side by side, looking at Clara's photo. An unlikely family, brought together by a sapphire necklace and the memory of a woman they both loved, each in their own way. And in his heart, August felt something new unfolding, not certainty but possibility. A possibility that maybe, just maybe, Clara had found a way to take care of him, even after she was gone. Fall was deepening outside. Golden leaves drifted slowly into the garden. Inside the Rayner mansion, the heaters kept the rooms warm. Lena sat on the living room rug, surrounded by books she had brought down from her new bedroom. In recent weeks, a new nightly routine had emerged. Before bed every evening, August read Lena a story. They started with simple fairy tales, but Lena soon showed interest in more complex narratives. Her capacity for understanding amazed August. She asked insightful questions and remembered details most adults would miss. On this Saturday afternoon, August stood by the living room door, watching Lena carefully turn pages, studying the illustrations. There was something deeply moving about seeing that small figure so utterly absorbed by the world of stories. "Did you find anything interesting?" he finally asked, entering the room. Lena glanced up, her green eyes shining with excitement. "There's one with dragons, and another about a girl who goes to a magical place." August smiled, sitting on a nearby sofa. "Which one do you want me to read tonight?" "This one." Lena held up a brightly illustrated book. It was a story about a girl who discovers a secret garden, one of Clara's childhood favorites. August took the book, running his fingers gently over the cover. "A good choice. This one is special." Lena nodded, pleased with his approval. Then she grabbed a notebook and pencil from the coffee table. August watched curiously as she opened the notebook to a blank page and placed the book beside it. With her brow furrowed in concentration, Lena began making pencil strokes on the paper. Her small fingers gripped the pencil too tightly, and her tongue stuck out slightly in the corner of her mouth, a sign of intense effort he'd noticed before. Leaning closer, August realized she was trying to copy the book's title, letter by letter. Her lines were wobbly, uneven, forming shapes that barely resembled letters. After several frustrating attempts, Lena dropped the pencil and looked at August with a mix of embarrassment and sadness. "I don't know how to write," she admitted quietly, her voice small. There was no self-pity in her words, just a statement of fact. August felt his heart tighten. Of course she didn't know how to write. She was only 5, and from what she'd said, she'd never been to a proper school. "That's something you can learn," he replied gently, sliding off the sofa to sit beside her on the rug. "Want me to teach you?" Lena's face lit up. "You know how to teach, like a teacher," August smiled. "I'm not a teacher, but I learned how to write once, Scout, and I can show you how." He opened the notebook to a fresh page and carefully wrote out the alphabet in a row, capital and lowercase letters. "These are all the letters we use," he explained. 26 of them. "Once you know them, you can write any word." "All of those?" Lena asked, looking a bit overwhelmed by the letters. "One at a time," he assured her. "We don't need to learn them all today." He wrote an uppercase and lowercase a at the top of a new page. "Let's start with A. It's the first letter of the alphabet and also the first letter in your name." "August," Lena said. "And also the first letter of the alphabet," August added with a grin. "Very good observation." "How do I do it?" she asked, picking up the pencil again. "Like this," August guided her small hand, showing her how to shape the letter. "See? One line up, one line down, and a cross in the middle." Lena tried on her own, her tongue peeking out as she concentrated. The first A was crooked, the second slightly better. "Very good," August encouraged her. "Keep practicing." They moved on to L, the first letter of your name. Then I, N, and A. In a matter of minutes, Lena was trying to write her own name, letter by letter, with August's gentle guidance. "Lina," she spelled slowly as she wrote. When she finished, She looked at the result with pure delight. "That's my name. I wrote my name." The joy in her voice was contagious. August felt a warm glow in his chest that he hadn't experienced in a very long time. "Yes, you did," he confirmed, "and this is just the beginning. Soon you'll be writing any word you want." Lena looked at her name on the page, then at August, her eyes shining with pride and determination. "I want to learn all the letters, all the words." "And you will," August promised. "A little bit every day." They continued for another hour. August demonstrated how to write simple words: sun, moon, sky. Lena soaked it all in with a thirst for knowledge that amazed him. Occasionally, she got frustrated when a letter wouldn't come out right, but she kept trying, determined to succeed. Watching her carefully form the letters of the word book, August felt a sudden, profound realization. What they were doing was more than a simple lesson. He wasn't just teaching Lena to write. He was giving her tools for the future, a future he could suddenly see more clearly, a future in which Lena would grow up in this house, learn to read and write, go to school, make friends, and face challenges. A future in which he would be there to guide, support, and love her. A future he never thought possible just a few weeks ago. "August," Lena's voice brought him back. "Look, I did it." She pointed at the word flower, which she'd written unassisted, copying August's example. "That's perfect," he praised, feeling a surge of pride unlike any he'd known before. It wasn't for his own accomplishments, but for someone under his care. "Tomorrow, can we do more?" Lena asked hopefully. "Every day, if you like," August replied. "We can make it part of our routine after breakfast and before going to the garden." "Yes," she agreed enthusiastically. "One day I'll be able to read an entire book by myself." "Definitely," August assured her. "Sooner than you think." As dusk fell, August closed the notebook and suggested they make dinner. But before standing, Lena looked at him with that sudden seriousness she sometimes had. "Thank you for teaching me," she said simply. "It's my pleasure," he answered, feeling his throat constrict with emotion. As they walked to the kitchen, Lena's small hand in his, August thought about the notebook with the letters and words that would be kept, maybe forever, as a tangible record of the start of their journey together. The beginning of something that would continue to grow in the years to come. He was building a future. A future that, in some way, Clara seemed to have helped create, even if she was no longer there. And instead of pain, that thought brought a strange peace. Letter by letter, word by word, day by day, they would build that future together. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into nearly 2 months since Lena had entered August's life. The mansion, once quiet and lifeless, now echoed with the sound of light footsteps and a child's laughter. The writing lessons progressed. Lena could already form simple sentences, and she read short words with increasing confidence. With each day, August became more aware that this temporary arrangement had grown into something permanent. Lena was no longer just a visitor. She was part of his life, his home, his heart. The thought of ever separating from her felt impossible now. That realization led him to an important decision: to formalize Lena's custody. One Thursday morning, while Lena was outside in the garden with Martha, the housekeeper who now came every day and had developed a special fondness for the girl, August sat in his office to tackle the necessary paperwork. The family lawyer had prepared the preliminary adoption documents. A daunting stack of forms, declarations, and petitions demanded his full attention. August started filling them out meticulously, occasionally glancing out the window at Lena playing among the flowers. While working on the documents, he realized he needed updated financial details. He'd abandoned management of his business during his year of grief, leaving everything to his partner, Thomas. Now for the adoption process, he needed a clear view of his situation. August opened his laptop, something he rarely did before Lena arrived, and accessed the company's system. He was shocked by the hundreds of unread emails waiting for him, many flagged as urgent. With a sigh, he ignored them for the moment and went straight to the financial reports. Immediately, something caught his eye. The numbers didn't look right. Revenue was roughly what he expected, but operating expenses had skyrocketed. Intrigued, August dug deeper, opening report after report and comparing current data to historical records. The more he investigated, the more disturbing the picture became. There were suspicious transactions, large sums sent to offshore accounts, contracts with non-existent suppliers, unjustified inflated expenses. A clear, unmistakable pattern. Thomas, August muttered, feeling a blend of anger and disappointment swell within him. His partner of over 15 years had taken advantage of his absence to siphon funds from the company. These were not small amounts, but millions that had disappeared in the year August had been lost in grief, disconnected from the world. With trembling hands, August kept digging, documenting each irregularity. The evidence was undeniable. The man he had trusted completely had betrayed him in the worst way. Those insistent phone calls, the desperate messages from Thomas begging August to return to the company, they weren't out of concern, but attempts to keep up appearances before everything collapsed. August's stomach turned. How blind he had been. How completely he had abandoned his responsibilities, allowing something this big to happen right under his nose. The office door opened gently, interrupting his dark thoughts. Lena came in, her dress slightly stained with dirt, cheeks flushed from playing in the sun. "Martha said lunch will be ready soon," she announced, stepping closer to his desk. Noticing his troubled expression, she asked, "What's wrong? You look sad." August tried to smile but couldn't. How could he explain something so complex to a 5-year-old? How to talk about betrayal, embezzlement, and fraud? "I found out that someone I trusted did something very wrong," he finally said, choosing simple words. Lena climbed into the chair beside him, looking curiously at the screen filled with numbers and charts. "What's all that?" she asked, pointing at the computer. "Information about my company," August explained. "It shows that someone has been taking money that wasn't theirs." Lena nodded with a seriousness that sometimes made her look older than she was. "A lot of money?" "Yes, quite a lot." "Is that why you're sad?" August thought for a moment. Was it really the money? No, it was more than that. "I'm sad because it was a friend, someone I trusted." Lena remained silent for a few seconds, as if processing the complexity. "Is it your friend Thomas?" she finally asked. "The one who always calls?" August stared at her, surprised. "How do you know about Thomas?" "He called yesterday when you were in the garden," I answered. "He kept asking when you were coming back to the company." The innocence with which she related this contrasted sharply with the severity of the situation. August felt a surge of protectiveness. He didn't want Lena to have any interaction with someone like Thomas. "Yes, it's him," August confirmed. Then, looking at the child beside him and the adoption papers on the desk, he felt a sudden clarity. "If it weren't for you, I never would have come back," he said, voice trembling. "I never would have seen this." It was true. If Lena hadn't appeared in his life, August would likely still be isolated in his grief, letting Thomas continue his scheme until nothing remained of the company he had built. Sensing the emotion in his voice, Lena reached out and took his larger hand in her small one, an unexpectedly adult gesture of comfort. "But now you're here," she said simply. "And you've seen it." Her plain words struck August like a revelation. Yes, he was here, no longer hiding, no longer avoiding life. He was present, aware, capable of acting, all because a little girl had gently pulled him back into the land of the living. "You're right," he agreed, squeezing her hand gently. "I'm here now." He glanced at the files on the computer and the adoption documents on the desk. He wouldn't let Thomas destroy everything he'd built, not when he now had an even more important reason to fight. "I'll have to fix this," he said, more to himself than to Lena. "Are you going to fight with your friend?" she asked, concerned. "Not exactly fight," August clarified. "But I need to make him return the money and answer for what he's done, and I'll have to go back to managing the company." "Does that mean you'll leave home a lot?" Lena's real worry shone through in her voice. August smiled, moved by her concern. "Sometimes, yes, but not like before. I'll find a balance. You'll always be my priority." Lena seemed reassured by that. "Can I go with you sometimes?" "Absolutely. You can see my office. It has an incredible view of the city." Her eyes lit up. "Can I draw there?" "Of course." In that moment, with Lena by his side, August felt a determination he hadn't experienced in years. He would reclaim control of the company, not just to save the business he had built, but for a deeper purpose. His decisions and actions now affected not only himself, but also the little person who had become the center of his world. He would do it for her, to guarantee her future, to set an example of integrity and responsibility, and he would do it for himself, because he deserved to reclaim that part of his identity, because he was capable, because he was alive. "Shall we have lunch?" Lena suggested, hopping off the chair. "Let's," August agreed, saving his files and closing the laptop. The company's problems could wait a few hours. Right now, it was time to be present for his new family. Following Lena out of the office, August felt a growing certainty. The truth, painful as it was, had been a gift, a necessary awakening, a call to action, and he was ready to answer it. In the months that followed, profound changes came to the Rayner mansion. Winter gave way to spring, and new traditions bloomed between August and Lena. What had started as an unexpected encounter became something permanent, defined not only by legal papers, but also by daily rituals weaving together the fabric of a true family. Sundays were filled with the smell of fresh pancakes in the kitchen. August rose earlier on these days, carefully preparing the batter, flour, eggs, milk, a pinch of cinnamon. When Lena came downstairs in her pajamas, hair messy with sleep, she found the table set with bright napkins, a pitcher of freshly squeezed orange juice, and an array of pancake toppings, honey, fresh fruit, melted chocolate. "Good morning, sleepyhead," August would say, deftly flipping a pancake in the frying pan. Lena would climb onto her chair, eyes shining with anticipation. "I already made 3 drawings before coming down," she often announced, as though she'd been up for hours, even if it had been mere minutes. These Sunday mornings became sacred. No phones answered, no emails checked. Just August and Lena talking about everything and nothing, planning their day, inventing stories while enjoying hot pancakes. On Tuesdays, after Lena returned from her new preschool, they gathered fresh flowers from the now flourishing garden. Together, they created simple arrangements for each room in the house, a ritual Lena had begun spontaneously in those first days and which became a tradition. "Flowers make the house happy," she explained, carefully placing some daisies into a cup on the kitchen table. Every night, without fail, there was story time before bed. August would sit on the edge of Lena's bed, book in hand, reading with different voices for each character to her delight. As Lena's reading skills improved, she sometimes read simple paragraphs herself, slowly pronouncing each word, with August helping when needed. "Just one more page," Lena would often plead, even as her eyes grew heavy with sleep. "Only one more," August always agreed, unable to refuse those pleading green eyes. Routines brought security. For Lena, who had experienced so much instability in her short life, the predictability was a precious gift. For August, it was an anchor to keep him present and engaged in life in a way he never thought possible after losing Clara. The mansion, once so silent it felt like a tomb, now had its own rhythm, its own music. The sound of small footsteps running down halls, laughter echoing off walls, dinner conversations, Lena's little voice singing in the bath. The house breathed again. One Thursday night, 4 months after Lena's arrival, something special happened. They were in the kitchen, preparing dinner together, an activity August found surprisingly enjoyable. Lena's job was to wash the tomatoes for the salad, standing on a stool to reach the sink. "Don't drop them," August warned, watching her as he chopped the other vegetables. "I know, Dad," she replied casually, focused on her task. "I'm being careful." The word hung in the air, Dad, spoken so naturally, without hesitation, as if it had always been so. August froze, knife suspended. A wave of emotion rose in his chest, choking his throat. It was the first time Lena had called him that. Noticing the sudden silence, Lena turned to look at him. "What's wrong?" she asked, worried. "Did I do something bad?" August swallowed the lump in his throat and smiled. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just that you called me Dad." "Oh," Lena said, as if just realizing it. Then, with childlike directness, she asked, "You don't like it?" "I love hearing it," August said, setting the knife aside and stepping closer to her. I love it very much. Lena's face lit up with a broad smile. Then I'll say it all the time. And so it was. After that night, Dad became the most frequent word on Lena's lips. She used it as if August had always been her father, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The adoption process was moving slowly as expected. August had hired top lawyers, prepared all necessary documents, and endured countless interviews and evaluations. The embezzlement case involving Thomas somewhat complicated matters. Investigations were underway, lawsuits being prepared. But most employees welcomed August's return to leadership, and everyone around him was impressed by how he balanced his new responsibilities with fatherhood. Finally, on a sunny fall morning, the long-awaited phone call arrived. August picked up in his home office while Lena was drawing on a small table beside him, as she often did when he had to work from home. Mr. Rayner, I'm pleased to inform you that the judge approved the adoption. The certificate will be ready for you to pick up tomorrow morning. August thanked the caller and hung up, remaining still for a moment to absorb the news. It was official. After nearly 7 months, Lena was legally his daughter, Lena Rayner. What is it, Dad? Lena asked, noticing his emotional expression. August turned to her, a wide smile spreading across his face. Lena, the judge approved our adoption. You're officially my daughter now. Legally, your name is Lena Rayner. Lena dropped her crayons and ran to him, throwing her arms around him with such force that he nearly toppled out of his chair. I'm really a Rayner, she asked, her eyes shining with joy. Really? August affirmed, hugging her tightly. Forever? After a long embrace, August gently pulled back to look at her. I think we need to celebrate, he announced. How about going someplace special today? Where? Lena asked, excitement shining in her eyes. Have you heard of the amusement park by the lake? It has a giant Ferris wheel, carousels, a roller coaster. Lena's eyes went wide. I've never been to a park like that. Can we really go? Of course we can. In fact, I think we should go right now. What do you say? The joy on Lena's face was all the answer he needed. 2 hours later, August parked in the amusement park's large lot. Hand in hand, they walked toward the colorful gates, where cheerful music played and people screamed with excitement on the rides. Lena hopped with excitement as they walked. Wearing a bright yellow dress and white sneakers, her dark hair in 2 braids, she looked like the embodiment of childlike joy. It's so big, she exclaimed once they were inside, spinning around to take it all in. Where do we start? August grinned, infected by her enthusiasm. Wherever you'd like. This is your special day. Lena's eyes were immediately drawn to the enormous Ferris wheel towering against the blue sky. Can we go on that? The Ferris wheel? Sure we can. Still hand in hand, they made their way there. In line, Lena couldn't stop bouncing on her toes with excitement. Have you ridden one of these before? She asked. A few times, August said, but never with you. So it'll be like the first time for me, too. When they finally boarded one of the cabins, Lena squeezed August's hand tightly as the ride began. Are you scared? He asked gently. Just a little, she admitted, watching the ground drop away as they rose higher. But it's the good kind of scared. August understood exactly what she meant. The good fear, the one that comes with anticipating something wonderful. The fear that is part of the adventure, not an obstacle to it. As their cabin climbed, the view opened up before them. The sparkling lake in the distance, the city stretching out on the horizon, the people below shrinking to miniature figures. Dad, look how small everything looks, Lena exclaimed, her initial fear forgotten as she pressed her face to the glass. We're on top of the world, August said, pulling out his phone. Let's take a picture to remember this day. Lena positioned herself beside him, both grinning as August extended his arm for the selfie. Behind them, the blue sky and the tiny city. In front, 2 radiant faces, a new family celebrating their first official day. The rest of the afternoon was a whirlwind of fun. Lena insisted on trying nearly every ride appropriate for her age. They spun on carousels, laughed in the spinning teacups, got soaked on the splash ride, and ate cotton candy until their tongues turned blue. When the sun began to set, They sat on a bench to rest, each holding an ice cream cone. "This is the best day of my life," Lena declared solemnly, her face smeared with chocolate ice cream. August smiled, gently wiping her chin with a napkin. "Mine too." Lena looked at him with that serious expression that sometimes appeared on her child's face. "Am I really your daughter now? For real?" "You always were," August replied sincerely. "The papers just made it official, what we already knew in our hearts." Satisfied, Lena returned to her rapidly melting ice cream. "Can we come back here on my birthday?" "We can come back any time," August promised, "and we can discover new places too. The world is full of wonderful things for us to explore together." On the drive home, Lena fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted by all the excitement. August drove in silence, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at his sleeping daughter. His daughter. Finally and officially. It felt as if life had given them not just a new beginning, but a new childhood. For Lena, the chance to grow up with safety, love, and stability. For August, the chance to rediscover the world through her eyes, to find joy in the simplest things, to learn how to live again. In the weeks following the finalization of the adoption, August devoted himself to a special project. The bedroom Lena had been using, the one that used to be Clara's office, was fine, but August wanted to give her something more. A brand new space designed just for her, filled with color and joy. While Lena was at school, August worked with decorators, choosing every detail carefully. They painted the walls a gentle aqua hue and added a floral decal to one wall. Floral patterned curtains let in light while swaying in the breeze. A new bed shaped like a little house, complete with a soft canopy. Bookshelves for stories and toys. A small desk for drawing and homework, and a cozy reading chair. A ceiling lamp that projected stars when lit, plus a table lamp shaped like a moon. Every detail was chosen with Lena's preferences in mind: flowers, color, stories, light. It was a room fit for a princess, without being over the top, cozy, practical, perfect for an active, curious 5-year-old. On the day it was finished, August picked Lena up from school early. "I have a surprise for you at home," he said as he drove. "What kind of surprise?" she asked, trying to pry more information from him. "If I tell you, it won't be a surprise anymore, right?" When they arrived, August asked Lena to close her eyes and guided her up the stairs to the door of the new room. "Okay, you can open them now," he said. Lena's eyes opened wide in astonishment. She stood still for a few seconds, taking in every detail of the transformed room. Then, letting out a little squeal of delight, she ran inside and spinning to see it all. "Is all this for me?" she asked in disbelief. "All of it?" "All for you," August confirmed, watching her reaction with a full heart. Lena touched the bed, the curtains, hurried over to see the books on the shelves, tested the desk chair. Everything seemed magical, extraordinary. "Look, Dad, there's even a special place for my drawings." August had installed a large corkboard on one wall so Lena could pin up her creations. After examining every corner, Lena rushed back to August, who was still at the doorway, observing her joy. She hugged him with all the strength her little arms could muster. "Thank you, Dad," she said, her voice muffled against his torso. "It's the most beautiful room in the whole world." August knelt to meet her eye level, holding her small hands. "You know, Lena, I've been thinking a lot about how we met. About how, on an ordinary day, I decided to drive aimlessly and ended up finding you with that necklace." Lena instinctively touched the sapphire necklace she still wore every day. "That necklace brought us together," August continued, his voice filled with gentle emotion. "And now I'm so grateful I found you. Because when I did, I started living again." Lena's bright green eyes filled with tears she didn't fully understand, but she understood the most important part: that she was loved, that she belonged, that she had a home. "I love you too, Dad," she said simply, throwing her arms around his neck in a tight hug. That night, after Lena fell asleep in her new room, August went down to the living room. He lit a fire in the fireplace, even though it wasn't very cold, and sat on the sofa, gazing at a new addition to the decor. Above the mantel, 3 items were now carefully placed. On the left, a photo of Clara, smiling in her beloved garden. On the right, a newer photo, Lena and August on the Ferris wheel, both beaming at the camera, a blue sky behind them. And in the center, in a small glass case, the sapphire necklace, neatly displayed. August had asked Lena if they could place the necklace there, where everyone could see its beauty, and she agreed with surprising ease. "That way it'll be safe," she had said, "and it'll be like she's always with us." Staring at that arrangement, the woman he loved, the child who saved him, and the mysterious link between them, August felt a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't the end of longing or sadness, but a transformation of them into something more gentle, something that left room for happiness as well. A mansion that once felt like a memorial to painful memories was now a vibrant home. It had sound, laughter, conversation, music, the pitter-patter of little feet. It had color, vases of flowers, drawings on the walls, toys occasionally strewn about. It had warmth, the warmth of morning hugs, shared stories, and hands held together. It had life.